Let's begin. But first, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Sky High Stories. Amara pushed open the front door, her body aching from 12 hours of board meetings, client calls, and endless emails. Her heels clicked softly on the polished wooden floor as she set down her briefcase, already longing for a quiet dinner or even a moment alone. But the familiar hum of the apartment was replaced by a heavy, oppressive silence that made her stomach twist. In the living room, Daniel sat rigidly in the leather armchair, a stack of papers neatly arranged on the coffee table in front of him. The soft glow from the lamp outlined his sharp features, but his eyes were cold, detached, and unreadable. As Amara approached, he didn't rise or even glance up. Instead, he extended one hand, sliding a crisp set of divorce papers across the table. "Sign here," he said, his voice clipped and emotionless, as if he were instructing her on a mundane task rather than ending a marriage. There was no hesitation, no remorse, only a calculated demand that cut deeper than any argument or raised voice ever could. Amara froze, her fingers hovering over the papers, the room spinning with disbelief. Her mind raced through the years, the laughter they once shared, the whispered promises late at night, the dreams they built together. How had it all come to this? The warmth of their early love now felt like a cruel memory, replaced by the icy distance between them. A flashback hit her unbidden, a rainy afternoon, Daniel holding her hand as they walked down the cobblestone streets, promising they would face the world together. Another memory, their wedding day, her dress flowing like liquid silver, his whispered vows so intimate they seemed eternal. And now here he was, reducing their shared history to a single cold signature. Amara's chest tightened with humiliation and heartbreak, but beneath it surged a strange, simmering clarity. Daniel's composure, his deliberate detachment, suggested this was more than a simple divorce. His actions hinted at strategy, even malice, as if he had planned this confrontation carefully, knowing exactly how it would affect her. A storm was coming, though she didn't yet see its full shape, and the first gusts were already battering the fragile walls of her heart. The next morning, Amara arrived at Vantage Enterprises, her mind still reeling from the confrontation with Daniel. She tried to push the lingering ache from her chest aside, focusing on the company she had built from the ground up. But the office felt different, charged with a tension she hadn't noticed before, whispers bouncing through the hallways like a storm gathering force. By the time she reached her corner office, her assistant was waiting, papers trembling slightly in her hand. "Amara, there are rumors circulating about investors pulling out. Some shareholders are questioning your decisions." Her voice faltered under the weight of the news. Amara's heart sank. She had faced challenges before, but this felt different, like the walls were closing in from all sides. Board members, normally deferential, began questioning her leadership during a sudden, unscheduled meeting. Their expressions carried doubt, uncertainty, even veiled impatience. "Are you sure this strategy is sustainable?" one of them asked, and the words felt like daggers aimed straight at her confidence. She dug into the reports, scrolling through unexpected shifts in share allocations and strange financial moves she hadn't authorized. Something was off, decisions made without her knowledge, subtle signs of sabotage scattered through the company's operations. And yet there was no clear culprit. Who could be working against her from the shadows? Her pulse quickened as she realized the stakes had just multiplied. It wasn't just about the marriage or Daniel's betrayal anymore. It was about her company, her reputation, and the empire she had poured her heart into. A sense of foreboding settled over her, thick and suffocating, as if the very air of the office conspired against her. Amara's fingers tightened on her desk edge. She knew she had to act, but the path forward was murky, fraught with uncertainty. Somewhere in the shadows of her own empire, a force was waiting, silent, deliberate, and dangerous, and the first moves of a much larger game were already being played. Amara's phone buzzed sharply on her desk, cutting through the tense silence of her office. The caller ID was unfamiliar, a high-profile corporate law firm she had never dealt with directly. Hesitant but curious, she answered. "Ms. Grant," said a calm, authoritative voice. "I represent the new controlling shareholder of Vantage Enterprises. You're going to want to hear this directly from me." Amara froze, her pen hovering over a report she hadn't touched in minutes. "Controlling shareholder," she echoed, disbelief lacing her voice. Who are you talking about? There was a pause, deliberate. Your father, Elias Grant. He has acquired the majority shares of Vantage Enterprises. The acquisition is complete and legal. We are contacting you to ensure a smooth transition and to clarify your position. Amara's mind spun. Her father? Elias had always been private, almost modest in his demeanor. He rarely spoke of his wealth, and she had never imagined him involved in anything of this magnitude. Her pulse quickened as she tried to reconcile the man she knew with the magnitude of what she had just been told. The lawyer continued, revealing fragments of Elias's intentions. He had been silently monitoring her company, ensuring its stability, ready to intervene if a threat became imminent. His actions were protective, strategic, and deliberate, but utterly secretive. Relief surged in Amara's chest, mingled with disbelief and a strange spark of curiosity. Why had he kept this hidden for so long? Suspicion crept in alongside gratitude. She realized that someone powerful was shaping events from the shadows, and she was only just beginning to understand the scope of that influence. Elias Grant sat in the quiet sanctuary of his study, surrounded by books, rare artifacts, and walls lined with screens tracking financial markets and global investments. To the outside world, he was a private man, unassuming and rarely seen at social events or public gatherings. Few knew the true scale of his wealth, trillions accumulated through decades of careful investments, discreet acquisitions, and philanthropy conducted far from the spotlight. Yet wealth was never his only concern. Elias had watched Amara grow from a bright, curious child into a determined, capable woman. From the earliest days of her career, he had tracked her successes and failures, ensuring she could navigate challenges independently. He admired her intelligence, her tenacity, and her unwillingness to compromise her principles, but he also recognized the threats that lurked in human nature: manipulation, envy, and betrayal. Daniel's presence in her life had always been a concern. Elias had noticed subtle patterns: Daniel's controlling tendencies, his quiet attempts to undermine Amara, and his cold detachment. Revealing his true influence too soon could overwhelm her, potentially altering her drive or making her dependent on his intervention. And yet he knew that waiting too long could be disastrous. Every decision Elias made was deliberate, each move measured, invisible to those around him. He positioned himself to act only when the timing was precise, when his intervention would maximize protection without diminishing Amara's agency. His heart ached with the weight of secrecy, the agony of watching her struggle while unable to disclose the truth, but he understood that real protection often required patience and subtlety. As he observed the unfolding events, he allowed himself a small, private smile. Soon, Amara would realize the depth of his foresight, and the invisible hand that had guided her life from the shadows would finally reveal itself. Until then, suspense lingered, a quiet tension that hinted at the monumental revelation to come. Daniel sat in his sleek, minimalistic office, the divorce papers neatly stacked before him, a faint smirk playing on his lips. To him, this was more than a personal ending. It was a calculated maneuver designed to assert dominance, claim leverage, and undermine Amara's authority both at home and in the company. Every word, every gesture had been carefully measured. He believed he was orchestrating the final act of control. Flashbacks crept into his mind, subtle reminders of the ways he had tried to manipulate her over the years. The quiet undermining of her business decisions, the advice that steered her away from opportunities, the carefully timed critiques of her ideas in front of colleagues, all aimed at painting her as inexperienced, incapable, or naive. Daniel had thought he was clever, that he had anticipated every move, every reaction. He had underestimated only one thing: Amara's resilience. Back at Vantage Enterprises, Amara began to notice small shifts in her favor. Subtle support from loyal employees, unexpected success from initiatives she thought were compromised, and a strange sense that unseen forces were protecting her. Though she did not yet know her father had intervened, she began to feel a faint but growing leverage, a rising power that bolstered her determination. The tension between them escalated, silent but palpable. Daniel remained confident, yet the foreshadowing was there. His meticulous calculations were incomplete, blind to the hidden strength that had entered the game. Amara's emotions surged: betrayal, anger, and a fierce, clarifying determination. Each flash of memory of Daniel's manipulations became fuel for her resolve. She would not be a passive player in this scenario. Slowly, deliberately, she began to transform from the wronged wife into a strategic force, ready to reclaim her power, her company, and ultimately her dignity. Amara sat in her quiet apartment, the evening light filtering through half-drawn curtains. Her thoughts swirled like a storm, memories of years spent balancing ambition, love, and compromise crashing against one another. She reflected on the neglect, the subtle dismissals, and the sacrifices she had made, both for her career and for a marriage that had long stopped nurturing her spirit. Each memory stung, yet beneath the hurt, a resilient spark had survived, untarnished and quietly fierce. Her phone buzzed with a message from Lydia, a trusted friend and confidant. When they met in a nearby cafe, the conversation poured out. Amara shared the pain of betrayal, the humiliation of Daniel's cold detachment, and the overwhelming stress of threats to her company. Lydia listened, her eyes unwavering, then said softly, "You've survived every challenge thrown at you. You're stronger than you think. Don't let this break you, let it sharpen you." The words ignited something deep within Amara, a blend of vulnerability and determination. She began to see the situation not as a trap, but as an opportunity to assert control, to take the first steps toward reclaiming her life. The coming confrontation with Daniel and the unseen forces behind the company no longer felt entirely terrifying. It became a stage where she could transform her pain into strategy. Suspense lingered, heavy and anticipatory. She did not yet know the full extent of her father's involvement, but a faint intuition whispered that powerful allies were at work. Amara could feel herself shifting, evolving from a passive victim into an active, calculated force, ready to face betrayal head-on and turn adversity into triumph. Daniel entered the room with the same controlled, confident stride that had defined him for years, expecting compliance, expecting Amara to fold under the weight of betrayal and legal pressure. The air was thick, almost electric, charged with years of tension, disappointment, and unspoken resentment. Amara, seated across from him at the large mahogany table, met his gaze without flinching. Her posture was calm, but inside, a storm of emotions churned, anger, hurt, and a simmering determination that had been quietly building. "Amara," Daniel began, his tone deceptively casual, "I think we can finish this quickly. Just sign the papers and we'll both move on. You know it's in your best interest." His words dripped with the authority he assumed he still commanded. She let him speak, allowing the tension to stretch unbearably. Then, without warning, the room's atmosphere shifted. A voice, measured, calm, undeniably powerful, echoed from a video screen behind Daniel. "I believe your calculations are slightly off, Daniel." The name on the screen froze him. Elias Grant. Her father. The revelation hit like lightning. Daniel's smirk faltered, his eyes widening as the man he had considered powerless, a mere private figure in the background of Amara's life, appeared before him as the puppet master he had never anticipated. Daniel's carefully constructed dominance began to crumble. His mind raced, every maneuver he had planned, every slight advantage he thought he held, dissolved in the presence of Elias's authority. Dialogue crackled through the room, sharp and intense, each exchange led with emotion. Anger, vindication, confusion, and faint regret all mingled as Daniel tried to recalibrate, but he was already behind. Amara's voice, steady yet strong, cut through the tension. "You underestimated me and everyone I love." Her words were precise, filled with quiet power, a reflection of the transformation she had undergone. Daniel attempted a final maneuver, a desperate effort to reclaim control, but every move was anticipated. Elias's intervention, strategic and invisible until this moment, ensured that Daniel could not outsmart them. The confrontation ended with Amara standing tall, a sense of catharsis washing over her. Betrayal had been met with empowerment, manipulation had met strategy. The tables had turned and Amara's heart, once weighed down by hurt and fear, now felt a blend of triumph and compassion. She realized that strength was not just about victory. It was about clarity, resilience, and the courage to face what was once unbearable. After the confrontation, Amara sought a private moment with her father, Elias Grant. They met in his study, the same quiet, sunlit room lined with books and soft leather chairs. The tension of the past days still lingered, but now it was replaced with anticipation, a desire to understand, to reconcile, and to finally grasp the full scope of what had transpired. Elias regarded her with calm pride. "I never wanted you to feel powerless, Amara," he began, his voice steady but tinged with emotion. "I watched from the shadows because I believed in your strength, but I also knew that the right timing would be crucial. Your independence, your resilience, it was all part of why I stayed hidden until now." Amara absorbed his words, a swirl of admiration, love, and mild frustration coursing through her. She understood the careful orchestration of events, the strategic patience he had shown, and the silent protection that had allowed her to grow into the leader she had become. Their shared glance conveyed what words could not, a deep unspoken bond, forged through years of trust, secrecy, and unwavering care. With renewed clarity, Amara returned to Vantage Enterprises. The office, once a place of uncertainty and whispered doubts, now felt like a stage where her authority was absolute. She navigated meetings with poise and confidence, asserting her vision with strategic acumen and unwavering decisiveness. Employees and board members alike responded to her leadership, their respect and trust palpable. Daniel, meanwhile, had been sidelined, defeated not with vengeance but with quiet inevitability. His attempts to manipulate and dominate had been neutralized, leaving him powerless in the wake of Amara's reclaimed authority. Though the immediate storm had passed, subtle hints of future challenges lingered, a reminder that life, business, and relationships were never without complexity. Yet Amara's growth, empowerment, and resilience provided a satisfying sense of closure. She had transformed pain into strength, betrayal into strategy, and uncertainty into clarity. As she looked out over the city from her office window, Amara felt a deep sense of triumph. The journey had been harrowing, led with emotion and suspense, but she emerged stronger, wiser, and fully in control of both her life and her destiny.